Welcome back to another live edition of the North Star Takes podcast. We're a Minnesota sports podcast. So if you're a Minnesota sports fan, please hit that subscribe button. If you're a Vikings fan, even if you did not like last night's game against the Green Bay Packers, if you even want to call it that, please give this video a like and show your disdain for how far down the team is sunk. That's basically what we're going to get into today. Minnesota Vikings, horrible loss to the Green Bay Packers. Kind of saw it coming when Kirk went on the COVID list. Sean Mannion gets named the starting quarterback, and it all just kind of unravels from there. I mean, we never had a chance. The game was over before it started. Sean Mannion looked horrific. Save a drive basically where he threw a touchdown to KJ Osborne. Outside of that, it was horrific. Dalvin Cook couldn't get anything going on the ground. The field looked a little slick. I saw some guys slipping last night, which doesn't surprise me when it's that cold and outdoor stadium with grass. So it was hard to get the run game going. Offensive line looked horrible. I mean, for the most part, that unit looked like it completely quit last night. And then you have Sean Mannion, who he makes Kirk Cousins look like Lamar Jackson. Like, he is just extremely slow, so painful to watch. So, I mean, what are your takeaways? I mean, the season's over at this point. We got eliminated from the playoffs with that loss. So where do you go from here?
Yeah, I would say I'm surprised, but I'm just not, because this team time and time again comes out and puts forth these lackluster performances when the games really matter the most, especially doesn't get any bigger than playing at Lambeau on Sunday Night Football in win or go home scenario. Like, you lose, you're out of the playoffs and it's over. So this doesn't surprise me one bit. Still haven't been over 500. Or, I mean, last night we weren't even trying to get to that point. We were trying to get back to 500, and still dates back to the beginning of 2020. That's just unacceptable for the talent on this roster. A bunch of talented individuals, clearly on a team that can gel, and I think that's on the coaching to bring it together. But I can also see how you'd partially blame Rick for that too, to mix the right personalities that are going to work and really put a winning product on the field, because I don't see any excuses for why this team shouldn't be at least a 10-game winner. And I think that's a pretty safe floor, really, because I think we've had so many opportunities this year to win games, and we just squandered them. Obviously, last night was not one of them, and I wouldn't necessarily expect us to win a game with Sean Mannion or whoever on the road against the Packers. But at the same time, there's been a lot of other opportunities. Like, it's more about that earlier in the season that we could have won, and it's just disappointing that we're at this point now where we're playing in this lame duck game to finish the season against the Bears, and both head coaches in the game will be fired the next day. So it's borderline not worth watching. I think the Vikings should straight up be handing out tickets for free to that game outside U.S. Bank, because seriously, people paying money for that. I think they're getting ripped, because it's like, this game literally means nothing. It means about as much as a preseason game, and if that, like in this game, you're probably going to see a bunch of seasoned vets that's like, you already know what they are, where you probably should play a guy like Kellen Mond, for instance, but instead you're going to get the same old Kirk, or if it's not Kirk, I guarantee you it's Sean Mannion, with the disdain Zim seems to have for Mond for some reason. So, yeah, I think next week is borderline unwatchable, but I'll still turn it on, don't worry. But it's still, it's fine. But at the end of the day, the silver lining is it's finally the end. It's run its course. We finally have something to look forward to, and it's in the very near future, not just kind of a distant thing that doesn't seem very tangible. Now it's crystal clear, and I think that's great. That's something to be excited about. It's just get through this last week that literally means nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, going back to your Zimmer comment, I mean, first of all, coaching has absolutely botched some of the games this year. Detroit Lions comes to mind.
Absolutely.
Both Lions games, really. The Browns game for sure.
Yep.
I know there's other ones that just aren't coming to mind right now. But
I'd say the Cardinals game borderline, just because I know everybody wants to think about the Greg Joseph field goal, and I mean, fairly so. But it also,
they could have run another couple plays at the end of that game to get closer.
There's that, and they also could have played it better at the end of that first half when the Cardinals got that extra 3 points on that 60-yarder by Matt Prater. What did we do? I think we squibbed that one, so then we gave him a chance basically to move the ball 20, 25 yards and get field goal range for Prater, who always kills us. So it's like, we've seen this movie before, obviously just with a different team, but it's like that's even an opportunity. That's extra 3 points, and those Cardinals needed all 3 of those points to win the game. So it's like, I mean, you can go down the list of these one-score games that everybody keeps talking about that we played in this year that we've lost, that really you could chalk it up just to coaching, not being prepared for certain situations. The Cincinnati game, the penalties killed us, and that should never happen right out of the gate of a season.
No.
So, and that one went all the way to overtime. So it's like that one feels like we could have got. It's just game after game. I mean, it's just I'm so sick of it.
And that Bengals game is huge because, if the Vikings end up winning that game, maybe Cincinnati's not in the spot they're in right now where
True, and
they
good for
look very
Cincinnati.
good. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cincinnati's a very fun team to watch. I love Joe Burrow. Wish we had a quarterback like that. Obviously, Jamar Chase is just a stud. I mean, that LSU offense from a couple of years ago, just insane.
Hard to envision any offense in college football topping that ever again.
Oh, I know. So, Zimmer comes out after the game last night, basically rips Kellen Mond in his press conference.
That alone is fireable.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, basically saying, well, I see him all the time, so why would I want to see him next week? It's like, okay.
Do you have any awareness whatsoever and any sort of leadership to you?
No, absolutely not. And like how to ruin a rookie's confidence 101 right there. And of course he doesn't care. He knows he's gone. But I mean, come on. Be a decent human being, be a decent coach, be a decent leader. And I don't know, at least throw him out there. You might as well see what you have. I mean, Sean Mannion is a waste of everybody's time. No offense to him. I'm sure he's a great guy. Everyone claims he's one of the smartest players they've ever been around. I saw Tyler Conklin said that after the game last night. And it's like, yeah, how far does that get you? Kirk is a film nerd too, and how far does that get him? So
I mean, Sean Mannion really is a poor man's Kirk.
He is. They have the very similar play styles.
Yep. It's not really about Sean the person. I'm sure he's a fine human being and probably a good teammate to have, but at the same time, it's like as my NFL quarterback in a winner take all game where I absolutely have to have it, it's not my guy.
No, absolutely not. I agree with you. And then, just unnecessarily ripping Kellen Mond. And then today he basically comes out and says he's probably going to start the starters next week. Any starter that's available, he's probably going to play them.
Okay.
Meanwhile, 80% of the fan base is just begging for this team to lose this Bears game. Try and get into the top 10 of the draft. Show us what we have in Kellen Mond so we know if we maybe have to draft a freaking quarterback again. There's all these scenarios at play, and all Mike Zimmer cares about is winning some meaningless final week of the season to get us to 8-9 and give Kirk one last good performance. And he doesn't even like Kirk, but he's going to play Kirk. It's like,
I know.
I don't understand any of this stuff. Nothing is making sense right now.
Yeah, how ironic is that? That's super weird. We've gotten to that point when you think back and you really reflect on these last 4 years with the Kirk Zim duo, seeing as though one, if not both, could be out during the course of this offseason. That you think back to Zimmer's comments that he refers to at the combine, where he's like, I don't want a quarterback for a bunch of money. I just want basically a game manager that's going to make dirt and be able to do what I want him to do as far as just pounding the rock on offense, do a little bit of play action passing, don't turn over the ball, and that's really all he wants. I just want to spend every cent we have on the defense. And I think a few years ago at that point, coming off a season where we had the number one defense, sure, okay, I can get behind that. It can be debated if that's a philosophy to win the Super Bowl or not. But like today, in today's game, last year, whatever, I don't think that's really a winning formula. And to be honest, too, I think Zim's still to blame for that, even though we signed Kirk all that money. And I know that definitely hinders things, and really limits you to signing quality free agents at other positions of need. But you still have the draft. You have all these draft picks. We drafted all these defensive players. None of them have turned into anything. No. We haven't developed a single player. As you mentioned to me during the game last night, what corner has developed under Zim? Zim's supposed to be this quarterback whisperer, and what has he done? Rhodes? I think Rhodes got pretty good while he's here. I'd say Wayne's is pretty solid, but nothing flashy. Beyond that, nothing. Absolutely nothing. So I think that's just unacceptable. If that's really your calling card, then what are we doing here? Because obviously if that's not working for you, nothing is.
And it kind of seems like he's taking these shots to it, these side shots at Spielman. And Spielman's definitely under the gun too. I mean,
sure. I think everybody's to blame here, but
100%. But at the same time, it's like, you can't tell me when we're picking mostly defensive players every draft that Zim's not the driving force behind that.
Yeah. So there's no way.
you can't tell me that, Rick Spielman's picking Jeff Gladney without Mike Zimmer's approval.
Yeah,
It's even like
exactly.
Chaz Surratt. People are like, well, would Zimmer really want a guy like Chaz Surratt? Like, yeah, he probably would. I mean, why else would we pick a linebacker like that in the third round?
Yeah, a project linebacker. There's no way that anybody besides Zim is really leading the charge for that pick.
So yeah, that makes no sense to me. And obviously, I think things are going to be a lot different this offseason. Zimmer, I would
Oh
say
yeah.
there's a 98% chance he's gone. It's all but certain at this point, and he kind of has the attitude like he's gone too.
Yep, the
Um,
writing's on the wall. Now it's all falling apart. The ship, theoretically or figuratively is actually sinking now.
yes, absolutely. And you'd have to think maybe Spielman might be gone or assigned to a new role in the front office as well. Um, I don't know. Like it could be a totally different philosophy going into next year, which I think is really what people want,
That's what we
especially
need. We need a reset.
absolutely new head coach with a new outlook on things, new GM. You need the GM and the coach to truly be on the same page because it certainly hasn't felt like Zimmer and Spielman have been over the last few years, and that's going to be important for drafting, for evaluating the quarterback position because Kirk Cousins is only getting older. He's got one more year on his contract, which is a $45 million cap hit, I believe,
Yep.
third highest in the league of any player next year. So that number is going to have to come down if they want to do anything in the offseason. Because even though the cap's going up, they're currently projected to be 10 million over the cap, and that's with all their one-year players leaving in free agency. That's with not signing Danielle Hunter to a contract extension. So they're gonna have a lot of different. There's gonna be a lot of moves made here to free up some money, I think.
Yeah, no kidding. I think we're gonna have a lot of holes to plug in next year. But I think the biggest thing is getting some good new energy in here. Like you said, I think that new GM head coach duo, that pairing has to work, and they have to be able to work together well because clearly there's a falling apart here, and I mean that happens to basically any team, really any duo, because these coaches and GMs, they don't last forever. They're not there forever. So
Yeah.
like it's going to happen unless people retire and they're just that great. But I mean, how often do you strike gold on that? Not too often. So like it's just inevitable. It happens. But now we've been at this for 8 years. Like it's time to reset and really bring in new life into this organization. Give fans something to get excited about. I feel like it's been a common thing, no matter who you are out there, as far as being a Vikings fan, that you're just kind of bored with the same old thing this year. It's just we ran it back like we did, or we ran back the same people in 2021 as we did in 2020. I guess shame on us because
Yep.
figured it would be a little bit different, and it wasn't. And I shouldn't expect it to be different. I think I was foolish for thinking that. So I think now it's really I'm glad in a way. I'm glad that we tried it, and now we know. But at the same time, it feels like we wasted a year, and the writing could have been on the wall before the season even started, especially all the drama and training camp. And it feels like this team can't overcome any sort of adversity. Meanwhile, you got the Packers going 3 seasons in a row, winning
Yep.
13 games each year. First team in NFL history ever do that. Rodgers having these back-to-back MVP caliber seasons. Meanwhile, their whole offseason was a disaster. Like, oh, is Rodgers going to get traded? Does he have beef with the front office? When it comes down to it, they have obviously an ugly week one showing, but then eventually it's just back to normal and they're fine and they win all these games and nothing
Yep.
matters because to us we'd win 3-4 games after something like that, and that's just I'm done with that. We should hold ourselves to a higher standard than
Yes.
what we got right now. We shouldn't be this fragile, shouldn't be this made of glass that it's like any slight thing goes wrong, anything goes off schedule, we're done. Like we're just buried. We're gonna sit there and basically be stuck.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. I don't know how the Packers can continue to just keep trucking like that. I think Matt LaFleur is a very good head coach.
Yes,
I wasn't certain about him when he first got hired, but
I
I
don't
mean
think anybody was.
the proof is in the pudding. The guy knows how to freaking coach, and he has a great scheme. And obviously, having Aaron Rodgers healthy helps. But
Absolutely.
you have to wonder, like, is Aaron Rodgers going to stay there? Like, I think there's a very good chance he does because it's either retirement or is he really going to go somewhere else where he has a better chance to win a Super Bowl? I don't know if I buy that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends too if they go to the Super Bowl this year because I think last year it seemed great, but then they come up flat in the NFC Championship against Tom and the Bucks, and then all of a sudden the wheels fall off, and then it sounds like a problem was in the making already, and then it just really boiled over. So I I want to see how the season ends first and then make a statement. But at the same
Yeah.
time, like you never know what kind of situations will really present themselves for Rodgers to be appealed to that he thinks he can go there and win. I mean, granted, he's one of the best to ever do it, so maybe he thinks he can win pretty much anywhere. But and who knows, maybe he's got in the cards where him and Devontae would go to the same place together since Devontae's a free agent. I
Right.
don't know, that could also be on the table, and that would help him because each came out and said last week that Devontae Adams is the best player he ever played with in his career. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's certainly an option. So I think there's a lot to be sorted out, but I think a good playoffs is on the horizon here for the NFL fans to watch first. But I think plenty to come in the offseason.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I saw a report the other day that the Packers are probably going to use the franchise tag on Devontae Adams, which
Oh, really?
that wouldn't surprise me. But if it
I don't
like
know if
if
that's going to sit well with him, though.
yeah, I know. Which I don't know. I mean, Allen Robinson did the same thing, so we'll see how that plays out. But
Yeah.
do you think it's almost worth it to just have the Packers win the Super Bowl and maybe Rodgers just retires?
If I know he's going to retire after this season, if he wins the Super Bowl with the Packers, yeah, I'd probably take it. Just get it over with. We're a lost cause this year anyway, and we're resetting. So, you know what? Heck with it. Yeah, if they win the Super Bowl, so be it. And that's just the way it is. Okay. But at the same time, it depends if you got that glimmer of hope that you just hiding in the back of your mind that you think there's some pathway to Rodgers playing here someday, then you probably wouldn't. But any other scenario, I think you'd be wishing for him to retire.
Yeah, there will be Vikings fans that will say, "Well, how could you ever want Green Bay to win the Super Bowl?" And normally, I'd agree with you. Like, I always want Green Bay to fail. I don't want them to win. But it's like even last night, I'm like, yeah, I want Green Bay to destroy us on national television. So it's obvious to ownership that there needs to be changes made. And if it takes a Super Bowl to get Aaron Rodgers out of this freaking division, then
Yeah.
fine. I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
I'm way more upset at my own team, at the Minnesota Vikings, and all the mistakes they've made over the last several years. And I'm more upset about our shortcomings than the Packers being great every year. Like,
Yes.
I can't be mad about the Packers until we fix what's going on here. Until this team is competitive, until we're fighting for that division title with Green Bay, then I can get upset about, the refs are favoring the Packers at Lambeau and Aaron Rodgers
Yeah.
has a horseshoe and they're making all these insane plays and of course he gets us to jump off sides and it gets the free play where he bombs it 50 yards down the field. It's like I'll get upset about that stuff when the games actually truly matter because right now they
Yeah.
don't.
When the margin's thin. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'll give Zimmer credit. He usually brings his best for Rodgers. Like for most of the first half last night, he had a pretty good defensive scheme going there. But
Yeah,
of
but
course,
they got screwed because the offense was horrible, going 3-0 every
yes,
drive. By that point, then your defense is gassed, and then once it got to the second half and our offense went 3-0 again right out of the chute, it's like the defense is basically like, why should we even try anymore? Because there's no get back in this game. We could have been down 10-0 the whole game. We were never coming back.
yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It was a tough game all around, but I think it's fair to start looking towards the future here. I mean, we got one game left in the season. Zimmer's probably fired a week from today, January 10th.
Yep.
Then
Mark it on your calendars.
within another week or two, we're probably hiring another head coach, I would imagine, or it'd be in the works at least. Kind of depends who it is, but
Exactly. It depends if they're still in the playoffs or not. Then technically it would wait a little bit. But like you said, it could, if it's Doug Peterson, it could be just instant. But if it's a guy like Byron Leftwich, you might be waiting a little while.
right. And as of now, I think there's really only two true head coach openings right now between the Jags and the Raiders.
Mhm.
And I think it's kind of possible the Raiders, that interim coach, I can't remember his name.
I forgot how to pronounce it. Ayakoka or something?
I think it's possible that they just make him their permanent head coach just because they've been playing well with all this crap going on. I saw they had
True.
another corner get a DUI last night. So
I did see that. Yeah. So I mean, he's overcame a lot. Then, yeah, you're right. And if the locker room seems to respond to him, then yeah, he might be worth giving a chance to. And that probably comes down if they can win that game on Sunday night against the Chargers. Then I think he's got a great chance because then they're in the playoffs.
absolutely. So that'll be interesting to see as well. But I'm sure the Bears will fire Nagy. I really think Vic Fangio is probably on the way out. In Denver. So I'm trying to think of some other head coaching openings here that would potentially arise. But the Vikings would have to have the most, attractive opening on the market for sure.
Oh, we have to. I think because everybody on the outside can view like what's great about this team and just makes you scratch your head why we're not doing more because the roster's there. Like the roster talent, the core pieces are all great. Like this offense, I think is ready to go. I think you just need a little bit of fine tuning from a good coach because I think the running back is one of the best in the league. We have arguably the best receiver in Justin Jefferson, or at least one of the best, basically in the
Yep.
same category as Dalvin is for running backs. Then you got Thielen, who's very much a solid producer, still a top 15, top 20 receiver, I'd say. And
Hmm.
then obviously health permitting, as he gets older, that becomes more of a concern.
Yep.
And then, but still a good receiver. KJ Osborne, I think, is very, very solid in his own right as well.
He
I
is
think
emerging.
we just got to give him the ball more, I think.
Yes.
And then we got Irv Smith Jr., who I think is somebody we're definitely sitting on that could have helped this season. Granted, I don't think I'm going to move the needle that much, but still, it'll be nice icing on the cake in a season like next year, maybe with a new coach. And then Tyler Conklin knows going to be a free agent. Hopefully, we can work something out to bring him back in. Then I feel great about all of our skill positions on
Yep.
offense. And then an offensive line that looked rough last night, don't get me wrong, but I think has some building blocks with Darisaw, Cleveland, and O'Neal. So it's just kind of figuring out what you're going to do with your center and your right guard. Hopefully, you can find something in
Yeah.
free agency that would be preferable. Just a plug and play guy, because I know rookies can take a little bit to come along. But I guess it depends how long you envision this rebuild or retooling being. But the defense is going to need a whole lot of work. I think the only place I feel really good about it long term is just the interior of the defensive line. I think guys like
Yeah.
Armin Watts and James Lynch, it's nice that they've been flashing because I think those are going to be good players for a while for us, and that's
Yeah.
huge. But really looking beyond that, oh man, I just don't feel very good about the rest of it.
So let's try to deconstruct this roster a little bit because
Sure.
obviously, you're keeping a guy like Jefferson. You're probably keeping
Oh
Dalvin
yeah.
Cook. I think there's some fans that would argue that they should trade him.
Mhm.
And he's got these off the field issues that arose like a month or so ago. And if anything comes of that, where he has to serve a suspension or something, then I'd maybe look into trading him because
For sure.
I don't think you need that kind of trouble when you're rebuilding.
No.
But you know, honestly, otherwise, I'd like to keep him around though.
Me too.
He's still very good at his position. He's a team captain, so it'd be nice to keep him around. And he's not old yet either. I think he's like 26, so you probably
Mhm.
got a couple years left in him. But
Yeah.
so Dalvin Cook and Jefferson for sure are building blocks. The three guys you mentioned on the offensive line are building blocks. Um, you got Thielen, who's getting older, and I'm not exactly sure what his contract looks like. He might have a year or two left on that thing, but I wouldn't mind giving him a little bit of an extension, but lowering his cap hit significantly. Because, I
Yeah.
mean, he's still a good receiver, but I think it's been 3 years in a row now that he's been hurt for stretches of a season. Like he hasn't played a full
Right.
regular
It's
season
that first
schedule in,
Kirk year.
yeah, 2018, and that was
Yeah,
one of
I
his
think you're
best
right.
years.
Yeah, that's right. How about
And
that?
KJ Osborne, like that one-handed catch he made last night was
That was
incredible.
incredible.
This guy can freaking play. So
Wow.
honestly, it might be a bit of a hot take. I almost think maybe not quite next year, but like I think they need to start transitioning Adam Thielen to being more of like a wide receiver three possession guy because KJ Osborne deserves more targets. He deserves to get the ball more. I think he's more explosive than Thielen is at this point. And if he can make like one-handed catches like that, especially down the sideline, like when I watched that play, I'm like, that's an Adam Thielen catch from 3 years ago. Like I've seen Thielen make
Yeah.
that play.
I love that comp. Yeah, I think there's definitely shades of that, and like you said, I think the explosiveness is definitely there with KJ. Like I think the one that comes to mind for me, or I mean a couple. I mean, you could think of them from the one hand catch in Green Bay last night to that huge one against Pittsburgh. That it was just a
Yeah.
dime down the field from Kirk, and then there was that obviously overtime winner in Carolina. That was awesome. So I think this guy's got a lot of swag, got a lot of talent, got a lot of like you said explosiveness. So I think I think you're definitely on the right track. That I think he should be kind of transitioning slowly, but transitioning into the number two role for us.
Yes. And like you said, Irv Smith will be back, and that'll be interesting as well because he'll be coming up on his fourth season, I believe, already in the league.
Yeah,
And so
contract year.
he's gonna be due for a contract. And it's like, well, he hasn't proven anything yet.
Yeah, yeah. It's like what do you really market this guy at?
So like I don't think there's any way they could sign him to big money, and I don't think there's any way he could demand big money.
No.
Uh, so maybe you can get him for a bargain, and he can finally stay healthy, and he can become a very productive player for you. Tyler Conklin, like you mentioned, he'll be a free agent, but hopefully they can sign him to a decent deal. I mean, it's not like he set the world on fire, but he had a good year. So there might be some teams that would be interested in looking at him, but it'd be nice to bring him back.
I think he is a borderline. He's proven this season. I think he's a borderline number one tight end for a team, no matter who he's playing with.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, he did shoulder the load most of this year. I mean, he got a ton of targets this season.
Yeah, he did. Mannion was finding him a lot last night.
Mannion was locking in on him, and I'm sure Mannion's been used to throwing to him on second team over the last several years here. So.
Yeah, good point. Good point. There's that chemistry there.
But and then you're left. So you got the three guys on the offensive line you mentioned. They'll all be back and be starting. But then you're left with Garrett Bradbury, who still has a year left on his deal, and then either Oli Udoh, Mason Cole, Wyatt Davis, or free agent TBD. Yeah. I still would really like to see Wyatt Davis get a shot, but it's pretty obvious we're not going to see that happen this year. So he was
inactive again last night.
We have no clue what we have in Wyatt Davis. We have no clue what we have in Kellen Mond. And these could be potentially two important players for the future here. And Mike Zimmer refuses to know what we have in them or show what we have in them. Maybe he knows, but the fans don't know.
No, because Mike is very close to the vest, and you never know what his motives really are, because it's like this could be part of a ploy to stick it to Rick. Like, why did you take these players high in the draft of the first two of our first few picks? Like that, he didn't like that or something, and then maybe it's just personal beef with Mond or Davis. Davis maybe comes in and out of shape to camp, and he's immediately in the doghouse, and there's no getting out of it. And then maybe Mond doesn't do what he's looking for in the preseason. Then, this guy's in the doghouse too. I never want to see this guy active on game day unless we absolutely have to. And I'm just so sick of that. So sick of that way of thinking that it's like, I hate rookies.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Like it's stupid. Honestly, it's stupid because the league is getting younger and rookies are making more and more of an impact every year. I mean, look at a guy like Jamar Chase. Look at Micah Parsons this year for Dallas. Good Lord.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. They got to figure out the offensive line. Garrett Bradbury is going to be back just because he's under contract, but the dude should not be starting at center. I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They should have two new starting players at those two positions for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And it kind of makes you think, too. It's like with Christian Darrisaw, didn't it take a Rashad Hill injury to force him into play to basically get a look at him and be like, oh, yeah, I think this guy can play better than Hill. It's like Rashad Hill was just dog water at the beginning of the season. It took that to get our first-round pick in the game. I don't understand that either.
Remember that? The exact same thing happened with Brian O'Neill. Literally the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
I can't stand that.
Yeah, I don't get what Zimmer's deal is. And, Darrisaw, he was battling an injury, so he was out the first few weeks.
True. So maybe they were different, but
maybe they were trying to ease him in. I don't know, but
and then splitting snaps against Detroit. What was that?
That was stupid. That was so stupid. But just once again, the coaching staff shows it has no idea what it's doing.
Just inept.
So on the defensive side of the ball, you already kind of mentioned you really like Armon Watts and James Lynch, and I do think we keep one of either Pierce or Tomlinson. But earlier on, I said I would be good with keeping Michael Pierce because he's shown to be more explosive, at least in pass rushing, than Dalvin Tomlinson.
But Tomlinson might be more durable.
Tomlinson is definitely more durable, and he's cheaper, at least, long term. I think we'd only have Tomlinson for next year. And then, I don't know, I would cut, trade, whatever, get rid of Michael Pierce, I think, because Armon Watts deserves to play a lot. James Lynch definitely deserves to be rotated in. They still have that Jalen Twyman, who was a 6th-round pick, which we don't really know anything about him as an NFL player, but he's an intriguing prospect that didn't get to play this year. So, I mean, they have some guys at defensive tackle that make it interesting. What are your thoughts on that position?
Yeah, absolutely. I like it a lot. And speaking of this whole shaming rookies and not letting them play and stuff, and even though they might be ready and could contribute, it's just not an option in Zim's mind for some reason. What if James Lynch could have played for us last year? Why did he not get more looks? Our defensive line was awful by the end.
Yeah.
We had that debacle in New Orleans where we gave up 6 rushing touchdowns or whatever it was to Alvin Kamara, and we just looked terrible. And it's yet James Lynch nowhere to be found. It's like, we're not going to play that guy. Comes out this year, and I think he's looked pretty solid for the most part in the action I've seen, at least pass rushing, I would say. I think he definitely gives you a little boost there, and that's huge. And I think it's part of the reason why the Vikings are top 3, top 5, or whatever it is in sacks this season. So They've been carrying the load. I mean, Griffin and Hunter have been out since week 8 and 11. So I think there's something to be said about those guys particularly. And I know Wanham is definitely involved too, but I think that might be another one of those things where it's like, I refuse to play James Lynch because he's my doghouse or something really irrelevant, just petty reason.
Yeah, it's Mike Zimmer, and that's why I'm so happy for it to be over, because it's not illegal for your rookies to come in and contribute right away. It's not illegal to empower your rookies and make them feel like they're important players. Like,
exactly.
just because
you can play, you can play.
Just because they're rookies doesn't mean they have to be the last one to go through a drill in practice or, stuff like that. Like, get them the reps. I mean, it's ridiculous. And man, it drives me nuts. But defensive end, this is going to be an interesting one because Danielle Hunter his contract expires after this season.
Yes.
We have to make some cap space to be able to sign him to an extension. And you got DJ Wanham, who's meh. I mean, he's shown flashes, but I mean,
he's gotten better, but not great.
Everson Griffin, I think, is probably done. He might be done playing football. Yeah. So I personally, I think, my ideal scenario is you can trade Kirk Cousins for a first-round pick. No matter what, I don't care what the team is. I don't care what the pick is. As long as you can end up with 2 first-round picks, I'm drafting an edge rusher and I'm drafting a quarterback.
Franchise positions, starting over with a new franchise head coach and probably GM too. Like correct. That's a good place to start.
Correct. And then you can kind of decide from there, which free agency will have already happened at that point. So you'll have already made a decision on Danielle Hunter. But if Kirk's gone, you can afford to pay Danielle Hunter. Either way, like, I'm fine if Danielle's back, but I'm also fine if we draft just a stud defensive end in the first round and just kind of restart at that position as well. Because we've basically been without Danielle Hunter for 2 seasons now. So, like, it's getting to the point where it's like I'm used to being without him. And if we can just go and draft a young stud to kind of take that place, maybe you can sign a free agent that's a decent option at the other end spot. Like, I don't think if you're going to be rebuilding and if you're going to be leaning into offense, I really don't think you need Danielle Hunter on this team.
I think that there definitely is an argument to be made there with that. And it's kind of what Jim actually told me today about Danielle Hunter. He said he was thinking about this exact thing. And he said another thing to consider with Hunter is that he's played, I think, in 6 games basically since the beginning of 2020. And by next fall, when we're playing again, he's actually going to be 28 years old already. So I think that's worth thinking about. I couldn't believe he's already 28 already. I remember him being super young for so long, but now he's barely played, and all of a sudden now he's just 28 by the time we're playing football games again in the fall. So that's a little bit of a worry, I think, too, with committing a bunch of money to him, because I think up until this point, I was all for just giving him the bag and letting him have it, because I think he is a very good defensive end. But like you said, maybe we can get by with other options. Like you said, if you trade Kirk, maybe you get a first-round pick in return, then you can use an edge rusher on that, or maybe that's the pick you use on a quarterback and use our own pick on a defensive end. Doesn't matter, same thing. But I think that's certainly worth considering, because we've played it on for so long. It's like, are we kind of transitioning away from just naturally anyway?
Yeah, that's my thing. It's like you mentioned, he's going to be 28 already by the time we play again next fall. We've missed out on 2 years of prime Danielle Hunter. So at this point, I wouldn't give him the bag.
No,
I think if you can sign him to a reasonable contract, then maybe you can bring him back. But honestly, I was going to mention this too. The only 2 oldish guys I would keep on defense are Eric Kendricks and Harrison Smith. I think the rest of them can all go, honestly.
I think those guys set a tone for a new wave of players.
Yes, because Harrison Smith, he's a perfect veteran to help cultivate young players. He's smart, and he's still good. Like, people think he's lost a step.
Viking for life.
Yeah, people think he's lost a step. I mean, that might be partially true, but also the defense is just horrible. So it's hard for him to do his job well when the corners aren't covering, when the defensive line's getting gashed in the run game. So I think Harrison Smith, obviously Eric Kendricks, I think he's the best player on the defense. So and he's a middle linebacker. You have to keep him around.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think with Harrison Smith too, to consider is that even if people think he might have lost a step, PFF doesn't think so, because during player introductions, I noticed last night, Smith is still 9th in the league for safeties. So I mean, what more do you want? This guy is consistently he doesn't miss games. I mean, he missed a game because I think or maybe 2 games because of COVID. I can't remember how many it was, but he was only out because of that. Otherwise, this dude's very durable, and he's
Yeah.
always going to ball out for you. And like you said, he's a very intelligent football player. He's always going to put himself in the right places and really can make some splash plays for you. So I think that's really what you want from a safety. And like you said, he can lead by example, really teach the young guys how to get better. And I think that'd be big for a guy like Cam Bynum that's already on the roster, making him better and potentially making him his replacement someday.
Correct. And I think Cam Bynum's probably going to be a starting safety next season because
Yeah.
I'm guessing Xavier Woods probably won't be back.
Probably not.
Getting into some other veterans here, Patrick Peterson, he's kind of mentioned that he'd like to be back.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, if Zimmer's not here, it doesn't really make sense to me. Like, I love Patrick Peterson. I think he's been good, not
I'd
great.
be totally down for bringing him back, but I don't know if he'd want to with Zim out of the picture.
Correct. It wouldn't make sense for him. And honestly, it probably wouldn't make sense for this team either because you're basically going to accept that your corners are probably going to suck again next year. But the hope is that you're leaning into the offense. Maybe you can get, a decent pass rushing attack in the offseason.
True.
Maybe you can improve a little at linebacker. Like if Anthony Barr decides to retire or whatnot, maybe you can, free up some money to sign a decent free agent linebacker or draft a linebacker or something. I mean, we've tried drafting linebackers the last couple of years and it hasn't worked out, but
it's been a disaster. But granted, I suppose they're just mid-round picks. Maybe we got to take a stab at it in the second round or something. Hopefully, I want to be done with drafting offensive linemen. We spent so many draft picks, high draft picks on those the last couple of years. We got to be done with that because we can't use all of our high draft picks in multiple drafts all in one position.
Correct. And I think it's always smart to keep drafting, especially like interior linemen, say the 4th, 5th, 6th round.
Because you never know when you're going to strike gold.
Yeah, just keep drafting them because a lot of starting offensive linemen across the league are, mid to late round picks. So
it's not like all these teams have these 5 first rounders or 5 offensive linemen that are all first and second rounders or something.
Exactly. So yeah, I think definitely don't draft offensive line. In my mind, the 2 biggest needs, especially if you're going to move on from Kirk Cousins, obviously is quarterback and defensive end. Because you really need another edge presence because even like last night, you can see these teams when they run the ball, they just attack our edges. DJ Wanham can't play the run. Sheldon Richardson's not a defensive end. He's never been able to play the run.
Yeah, he might be a defensive end in a 3-4. We don't do a 3-4.
No, and that's another guy I don't want to see back either. He's done close to nothing this season. So, yeah, I'm really ready for a restart though. Like if this team, honestly, like I think if you clean out guys like Barr, Patrick Peterson, Sheldon Richardson, Everson Griffin, Daniil Hunter, if those guys weren't even on the team, I don't think the win-loss record changes that much. This team has been.
I don't think it really does either that much anyway.
You could argue maybe with Kirk because Kirk played some great games this year. The offense was good for the most part. I mean, there was definitely some games it was not, but the offense once again carried this year, and that's why the Kirk decision or why the Kirk discussion is tough because it's like, yeah, you're probably not going to do better than him, but at the same time, if you're going to be rebuilding, if you're going to be kind of starting over while still keeping some good pieces to try to be competitive, and set up this next quarterback potentially to be in a good situation, you cultivate him well. You don't throw him in like a Trevor Lawrence and just have absolutely nothing there for him. And obviously he's struggling. Like
Laquan.
Yeah, Laquan Treadwell is the Jags' best receiver at this current moment. So
yes,
that's unacceptable beyond all means. But
yeah, that's not doing your franchise quarterback justice.
So, anyways, long story short, I think it's worth it to move on from a lot of these guys. Basically, everybody above 30 that's not Harrison Smith and Eric Kendricks. And Adam Thielen. I'll give Adam Thielen the benefit of the doubt. He's from Minnesota. He should probably retire a Viking, but his cap hit is going to have to come down.
I think those got to be the 3 vets you'd want to stick around to be a part of the new wave of this team, new era, new culture. I think that's a great place to start. And I think the rest of them, I think are more Zimmer guys than just good football guys. So I don't know. I think there's certainly I think there's validity to your points there with the specific guys we should keep around.
So I want to talk to Samson here. Says he wants to draft Malik Willis. So you and I, we hung out with a couple other buddies, Jackson and Krenzy, this weekend. We kind of dove into some, like the current landscape of the college quarterbacks, who's projected to be first-round picks or second-round picks. say, whether we can trade Kirk for a first or a second, if you have 3 picks in the top 2 rounds,
Mhm.
potentially 3 picks in like the top, what would it be, 52-ish, 50
Yeah.
or 48 or something like that. I mean, potentially you could have 3 picks that high. So, I mean, where do you stand on these quarterbacks? I mean, you got Kenny Pickett from Pitt. You've got Matt Corral from Ole Miss. You got Desmond Ritter from Cincinnati, who just lost to
Mhm.
Alabama.
Mhm.
I mean, you got some of these guys. Malik Willis is kind of looking like he's going to be a project. I mean, where do you stand? If Kirk is gone, do you trust any of these guys to be able to step in right away?
I'm a big Matt Corral guy myself. I think playing SEC football, I think that has a lot of pedigree, and I think
Yeah.
he played very well this season for them. I know he got hurt in the bowl game, so we didn't really get a chance to see him play against Baylor, but I think his overall body work is great. You can clearly tell he's a very team-oriented guy, and I mean, he played in that bowl game where he really didn't have to, but he wanted to play for his guys. And uh, I also want to preface this by saying, like, I have no problem with people opting out of bowl games and
No.
taking care of themselves first, so then they're in a good spot for um, basically getting drafted in the spring and not ruining that, so then they can make the money and provide for their families. I just want to say that real quick. But I respect Corral also playing for his team. Like, I think that's great. I think that's kind of leader you want on your
Mm-hmm.
football team and the potentially a face of your franchise. I think this guy's just a gamer. I know I think which ones his performances stick out the most to me was I watched him play against Alabama, and I know they got routed in that
Yep.
game, but really watching it, he seemed fine. Like he was making the throws he should, make the plays that they asked of him. But it was just I think the talent around him wasn't as dynamic nearly as to keep up with an Alabama team. And I think this guy is just I he seems like blue chip quarterback that could be most like starter ready right away for us. And if we're assuming Kirk's out of the picture, then I feel like I'd want him. But then I kind of like the point brought up here. If let's say that'd be kind of interesting if Kirk was still here and we draft a guy Malik Willis, just a complete opposite end of the spectrum kind of guy,
Yeah.
just a project you want to groom for a year, maybe two. And I think that could be fun as well. I think he's probably easily got the highest boom bust potential just because if you look at all his huge plays, like this guy can make all sorts of them. Go look up his highlight videos. I mean, this guy can
Yeah.
throw the ball over the yard. He can run all over the place. I mean, he's a very dynamic athlete. But the thing is, I don't know if he's truly going to be a guy who can play in an NFL game. He struggled against the best competition he played in college. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's hard to really evaluate that because it's like he played at Liberty. So was the
Yeah.
talent around him just way too far below the good teams he's playing against? I don't know. I think that's certainly worth evaluating. But I don't mind the idea of Malik Willis because he probably is a top 5 quarterback in this next draft class.
Yeah, and kind of depending who our next head coach is, I kind of trust whatever decision they make. Like, even if it ends up being Kirk Cousins, I really don't
Mhm.
want to extend him. But if they say, "Hey,
Oh,
let's give Kirk a year and just see what we can do with him,"
mhm.
but maybe they could still draft his replacement. Like maybe a Desmond Ritter falls to the second round, or you pick a guy like Malik Willis and you just basically let him sit back and develop. In my ideal world, I think I'd pick, if you can have 2 first round picks, I think I'd take either Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral. I think I'm fine with either. I think Kenny Pickett's more of like a Justin Herbert prototype, a bigger guy, but he's able to run a bit. He has a good arm. Obviously, he played winning football this year. He got picked all the way up to the 12 seed. He got him in a good bowl game.
Won the ACC. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, he had a great year, and you like to see that because that's kind of what Joe Burrow did his senior year too. He really
As
took
a
off.
winner.
Yes,
Yeah.
elevated his team. So you like to see stuff like that. And Matt Corral, obviously, Ole Miss was pretty good this year too. So I'd really be fine with either of those guys. I think they have the intangibles you want. I think they're leaders. I think they're winners, like you said.
Mhm.
If you can get one of those guys, and then you still have Kellen Mond here, you can just have a true quarterback competition. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, you probably want your first round pick to be your quarterback, but hey, maybe this, puts some extra juice in Kellen Mond, and maybe he comes out and performs great. I mean, I wouldn't mind having a true quarterback competition between two guys you've drafted over the last 2 years. I think we need some of that on this team. And if you have a Byron Leftwich, if you have a Doug Peterson, maybe even like an Eric Bieniemy, I would trust whatever that guy is doing at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think if you brought in a guy like Doug Peterson, I think you really would see that competition because if you go look up on Google and just search Peterson talking about quarterback rooms, he wrote an article recently. I forgot. I think it was the 33rd team maybe that's not the right website, but you'd find it if you search for it. Doug Peterson quarterback room. And he talks about the importance of having a lot of guys that could play in there because you never know what situations are going to present themselves. Injuries, this and that. I mean, these days COVID too. You got to account for that. So I think he would load up the quarterback room as much as possible. So I'd like that a lot. But who knows? Maybe Bieniemy and Leftwich did the same thing too.
Yeah, I still think Leftwich is my guy as of right now. I love that Tampa Bay connection. I love that he calls the plays. I love that he's been around Tom Brady for 2 years. He played in the NFL, like he gets it. So there's so many different things I like about Byron Leftwich, and from there it's like Doug Peterson's intriguing. He won a Super Bowl at the Eagles with a backup quarterback, and he, like you just said, he knows the quarterback position. Beyond that, I was kind of high on Kellen Moore, but man, that Cowboys offense looks so inconsistent sometimes.
I'm not. I'm off the Kellen Moore train, but
I think he might just be a little too young yet. Like he's only been calling plays a couple of years. Like I don't know. He played in the NFL, except he was like a backup for just a few years. So I would maybe give him a little more time. And Eric Bieniemy, I think I'm a little hesitant on him too, just because it's been a couple of years. He's been the hot name. He still hasn't been hired. He doesn't call plays in Kansas City. There's not a lot of good coaches from the Andy Reid coaching tree, because I know like Matt Nagy's one of them. And I'm not comparing, Nagy and Bieniemy are not the same person, but it is considered.
Doug Peterson's also from that tree too.
That is true. That is true. But yeah, I don't know. I think,
chilly though.
Yeah, true, chilliest. But you hear stories about how like Bieniemy's like kind of a hard ass, and like he was hard on Adrian Peterson when he was here, and they'd like get into shouting matches with each other. And I don't know if that would really sit well after having a Zimmer to bring in another guy like that,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that would just fall on deaf ears.
So, Big Gritter here says, can we please see Kellen Mond on Sunday?
Yes,
I'm
please.
with you, man. There's nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing to lose. Throw him in there and see what you got.
Because what more do you want to see out of the starters? Do you want to win some meaningless game for nothing that nobody will remember 3 years from now? I think you're certainly going to remember what Mond looks like in the offseason in this game. You're not going to remember what Kirk or Mannion, whoever, what they did. So I think that it makes all the sense in the world to play Mond, see what you got, because maybe he looks great, and then you really have a decision on your hands to be like, well, can we confidently roll with this guy as a potential starting quarterback option next year? Obviously still support the room, maybe at least with a journeyman quarterback that can compete for the job, a bridge guy. But I think it makes all the sense in the world to play Mond.
And honestly, I would like to see Kellen Mond with the full complement of starters for at least the first half. I don't want Jefferson to get a major injury or Dalvin Cook or anything like that. But I want to see Kellen Mond operate with the starting unit, at full strength. I know that our 3 best offensive linemen are all on the COVID list right now, but
we'll see if they play Sunday or not. Yeah,
they all could come off by then. I don't know. I want to see Mond with that starting unit and just see if he's able to do anything with it. Can he get play action going with Dalvin Cook on the field, and can he throw it to an open Jefferson, or throw Jefferson a contested ball that Jefferson can go up and get, stuff like that. Because those would be the guys he'd be playing with next year. So I kind of want to get a head start on that, because I don't want to see him in there with Dan Chisena lined out at wide receiver and God, I don't even know who the other D.D. Westbrook maybe, or Amir Smith. Yeah, I'm intrigued by
him.
I'm intrigued by Amir Smith Marset, but I wouldn't want him to be wide receiver 1 out there for Kellen Mond, I don't think.
Yeah, because then you're not even getting a fighting chance, and then Zim would just go, see, this guy can't play.
Which no one will care what Zimmer says, because he'll be fired right after that game. So I can't wait. And that's kind of the thing too, is like the offseason, especially like with the NBA, but even now kind of with the NFL, and especially how big the draft has become. The offseason is such an exciting time. It's obviously every fan base has hope in the offseason, because if we hit our free agency right and we hit the draft right and we make the right hires, anything can happen. And obviously it's an extreme long shot, and the Vikings are going backwards. They're not going forwards, so we have to remember that. But sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards. And, next year could be a rough year, especially if you trade Kirk Cousins. We're all aware of that. But, if you don't draft a quarterback next year and you say you sign a bridge, well, then you could set yourself up for a potentially better 2023 quarterback class. So it's all stuff to think about. It's not going to be a 1-year fix. They're not going to win the Super Bowl next season, and that's okay. But they could be competitive depending on the moves they make. And if Aaron Rodgers leaves Green Bay, they could compete for the division. I mean, that kind of stuff is not out of the question.
Oh, yeah. If you have a high-powered offense, you have a really competent play caller in there, really running the show, I don't see why not. Because I think an offense could take you a long ways in this league. Maybe not like solely an offense to win a Super Bowl because you still have to have a somewhat complementary defense. Doesn't have to be fantastic, though. But you could at least win a division, I think, with a dominant offense and Rodgers out of the picture.
And the Vikings defense over the last 2 years has ranked like 28th. And I think this year I saw they're 31st in total defense. Like,
Sweet.
it really can't get much worse. Like,
That's a good point.
I guess it could be 32nd, but like, they're only going to get better on defense. I think Cam Dancer is going to keep taking steps. I mean, the dude can cover. It's like he drops a pick or he just makes a dumb mistake every now and then, but like he can cover, so that's encouraging. Cam Bynum obviously can play. Like there's young guys on this defense that can play, and if you keep supplementing it in the draft, you have a coach that's actually willing to develop these guys. Or maybe he keeps like an Andre Patterson around and he just gives them full reign of the entire defense, which Mike Zimmer has refused to do and has promoted his son to be co-defensive coordinator with Andre Patterson.
Yeah.
But
as Jackson says, nepotism to the max.
Yes, nepotism, absolutely. And it's true. There was an article that came out today. I think 111 NFL coaches are all related to or know somebody that was a coach in the NFL, and that's how they got in, basically. 111 coaches across the league. And you see that with the Vikings. You got Zimmer and his kid. You had Kubiak last year. Now you have his kid as offensive coordinator. Andre Patterson. Apparently his kid is on the team as like an assistant running back coach.
Yes, he is.
These guys are everywhere. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, granted, there's definitely a lot of them out there that are probably pretty deserving. Like they're probably good football coaches in their own right, but there's definitely some out there that should definitely not have a job and they're just there because of who they're related to, and that's just dumb.
Yeah, absolutely. Caden chimes in. Your preseason prediction was spot on. Too bad for the playoffs. Too good for a draft pick. I don't remember exactly what we predicted. I think we both predicted them around 10 wins or so.
I thought it would be about 10, maybe 9 or something like that. But I kind of thought we'd squeak into the playoffs, but we didn't even do that because this just turned into a train wreck at the end. But yeah, that's where we've been sitting for now every year with Kirk. I mean, we had that one season in 2019 that was pretty good. We cleaned up on basically everybody outside of the division because that year we got swept by both Green Bay and Chicago, but we still ended up 10-6. But all the other years, we were strictly 500, if that, and we just struggle in the biggest moments to win games and put ourselves in good spots to make the playoffs in the first place. So, yeah. I know, right? I think Caden summed it up well. Too bad for the playoffs, too good for a draft pick, and that's just so annoying. That's such a painfully mediocre place to be sitting in.
It is, and we knew that going into the season. If you have Kirk Cousins, this full complement of offensive weapons, you're not gonna be a top 5 draft pick. I mean, look at the teams in the top 5 right now. Jacksonville, horrible. Detroit, horrible. The Jets are up there again, horrible. New York Giants. Did you see that game against the Bears yesterday? I mean,
Joe Judge should be fired.
Goodness. They're going to bring him and Daniel Jones back, really?
I think they're tanking for Bryce Young. You can't change my mind about that.
They got to be. I mean, they have to be.
Bryce Young could be the answer for a lot of franchises, though. But I feel like if the Giants are playing 3D chess here, this isn't a horrible move. They feel like if they can withstand another horrible season, then just really put it on Joe Judge to make them super bad next year.
Yeah, and that's kind of what was frustrating yesterday too, is we didn't actually gain any draft positioning yesterday. The Packers smoked us, but all the teams below us lost. The Falcons lost. The Broncos lost. I don't know. It's tough. I mean, hopefully if we can lose to the Bears, we can get into the top 10, but it's going to, you have to bank on these other teams, maybe winning a game too, because they must have the tiebreaker for sucking more than we do. So
yeah, I don't think the Broncos will steal one against the Chiefs. I thought they could have if the Chiefs had won last week and the Titans lost and they clinched number 1, bench everybody. Then I think the Broncos could win that game, but since they're not, they're playing for everything. Then they're definitely not beating KC. And then Atlanta's going to play New Orleans this week, and they might actually be able to win that one. No, New Orleans is. They're not a good team. I mean, they grinded out a victory against the Panthers last week, but still, they're very shaky. Obviously, a lot of instability at the quarterback position. So I think Atlanta could potentially win that one.
See, we got Washington football team is in that mix as well. They play Dallas?
No, they're going to play the Giants.
Okay, so they could beat the Giants.
Yeah, they could.
But then again, I don't know what our tiebreaker would be with them because we will not have a worse record than them. If at the best, we'd have the same record as them.
Yeah, I'm curious how those tiebreakers would shake out. I don't know that off the top of my head.
And then Chicago, I think I saw no matter what, we're going to finish second in the division. So
Ooh.
that Chicago pick is currently at 8. So I don't think we can get any higher than 8 right now. Seattle's at 7.
Okay.
So, well, the Seattle pick is going to the Jets. The Bears pick is going to the Giants. But I think realistically, the highest we can get right now is 9. So anywhere from 9 to 12, I'm guessing, is probably where we're going to end up.
I'd take 9.
I would take 9 too. I think top 10 is really important, especially because I don't think the 2 quarterbacks are going to go. They definitely won't both go top 5. If Houston doesn't pick one, I don't think any of them will go in the top 5.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't at this point. Obviously, a lot changes. There's a few months until the draft, like plenty of time. But at this point, I don't see a quarterback going top 5. I don't think either of these guys, or any of these guys, I should say, really have the value there to be a top 5 pick.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so if you can sneak into 9, I mean, this is all way out ahead, like you said. But Carolina's at 6. They'll probably be the first one to pick a quarterback, I'd imagine. Jets won't. Giants won't. Well, the Giants might. I guess they're sneaky, but if they're truly keeping Daniel Jones, then they won't, because he'll still be under contract too. So Washington at 9. If we can somehow move ahead of them, that's the spot right there to take that second quarterback, whether it's Pickett or Matt Corral. At least the way it's looking right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's shaping up that way, and I think there's basically every team around us, and it makes sense logically because you think of the teams that aren't in the playoffs first, and then the teams like us that are in this spot that are looking for a quarterback because it feels like we're just stagnant. We're hanging around mediocre to basically below average, and that's why these other teams are right around with us because they also have the instability at quarterback and they could also use a new face of the franchise kind of guy. So it makes sense. But yeah, all these teams, Washington, Carolina, Atlanta even. I think Atlanta can move on from Matt Ryan or maybe take his replacement at least. And I think there's a lot of teams in the mix there. Denver to take a quarterback. So I think every game that every spot we can move up in this last week with a loss to the Bears counts.
Yeah, and so I'm looking at Tankathon here, and it's got the tiebreakers at the bottom of the page. Okay. It looks like the first tiebreaker, especially if there's a bunch of teams tied at the same record, is strength of schedule. So the Vikings have a 513 strength of schedule. Washington is a 533.
Jeez.
And so they'll play the Giants, so that'll tank. But we play the Bears, so ours will go down as well.
Okay.
Atlanta's is 461. Okay. Denver's is 478. You'd think that will go up with them playing the Chiefs.
Yep.
So it is possible that we could somehow sneak in there, but we have to lose to the Bears. And if we're going to play Kirk and we're going to play the starters, I really don't think we're going to.
Yeah, because of course they'll win the Week 18 game. That means nothing. Every time we play the Bears at home and late in the season to really get anywhere, we always lose. But when all the chips are off the table, all the pressure's off, who cares? Let's just go win it and basically win, get a win that hurts us more than helps us.
I mean, that win against the Lions last year cost us at least a couple draft picks. Yep. And that caused the 49ers to move up to 12, which they were then able to trade up to 3 and get Trey Lance from that spot. So
yeah,
it all matters. I mean, it's a meaningless game, and people can say, who cares if they win? Like, we're not going to get a high pick. It's like, no, every pick matters in this draft.
Yeah.
One last comment here from Big Gritter before we go.
Sure.
Zimmer was supposed to have a game plan like the Patriots had against Buffalo. He should have ran the RPO all game with Mond or give it to Cook all game. Here's what I'll say about that is they kind of tried to get Dalvin Cook going early, but with no threat of Sean Mannion passing, it was impossible to establish the run. I mean,
totally sell it for the run. Yeah.
Dalvin, he also didn't, I don't know if he wasn't running hard because the field was slick, but he didn't look like he was moving fast. And then he was kind of limping off the field at one point. So I don't know if he was hurt or what going into the game, but
super cold out there, but
exactly. So the run game just was not going to work last night for the Vikings, and it's whatever. I mean, they were going to lose no matter what. It is disappointing Mond didn't play just to give him a different look, but then again, if it would have been that much of a disaster with Mond, we'd probably be talking differently too. Like, well, that sucks. We had to throw him out there. So
yeah, good point.
Who knows? Hindsight's always 20/20.
Oh, 100%.
Do you have any other thoughts, I guess, before we take off here? And we'll we'll probably do a video after the Vikings game next week and kind of wrap up the season and talk about the offseason. But anything you're looking forward to here, I guess.
Yeah, I guess to cap it, I know I definitely dumped on Zim periodically, at least throughout this whole stream. But I will say, I have some pretty sour feelings towards him as he's exiting here. But I kind of feel like that's natural with any coach more times than not. But looking back at it holistically, his 8 years here, I think he was a good stepping stone coach to get us in the right spot where it's not a total dumpster fire as he's leaving, where it's going to take a lot of rebuilding and it's going to be a while before we can actually contend. Where I think we can actually get a new coach in here and contend sooner rather than later. So I will say he's done a pretty good job here. Obviously, not nearly as close to a championship as we'd like, but for the most part, he turned us around. He's got us going in the right direction. Now we just need another coach to really take us over the top and put us in the playoffs more consistently and give us a lot more chances as far as stacking playoff wins. So in the end, yeah, I'm pissed at Zim right now. But overall, I'll get over it once it's not so fresh and not happening right in the moment. I think looking back on it, I'll be fine with it. Like, we won a lot of games, and it was great that we never had a disaster season. But at the same time, maybe that disaster season would have helped us more than I know. But I think, to close it, pissed at him now, but I'll get over it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, overall, he's done a good job. He got us to NFC Championship game, which is more than you can say for a lot of coaches.
Yep.
So I mean, he did a good job. He won the division twice. Obviously, you'd like to see it more. We've missed playoffs 3 of the last 4 years, but like we've said before, I don't think that's a huge coincidence with Kirk Cousins coming in.
And I feel for him because he did not want Kirk, but once we got him, he had to make it work. He didn't try to until this past season when it was just too little, too late.
Exactly. So it's on him for not at least trying to make it work, but he did warn people before it even happened. Like, if we sign this quarterback to a bunch of money, we're not going to have resources to, but his thing is he wants to win with defense, and he's not willing to change his mind on that. Whereas if he would have just leaned into Kirk maybe a little bit, then okay, maybe we could have won with offense, but it had to be defensive driven. It had to be run game driven. And so that's where it never aligned, because even with Kirk here, he wanted to win that way. So
exactly.
It's tough. I liked Zim throughout his time here. This last season, he's really grinded my gears, and I'm ready for him to go. But
really soured on him.
Like you said, that happens at the end of every coaching tenure. So obviously wish him the best if they do end up moving on from him, because I'm sure they will. But I mean, hopefully the next guy comes in and can improve upon what Zim's done here. So I guess that's really the hope for all of us. But that'll do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Like I said before, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like if you haven't already. And leave your comments below. Even though it's a live stream, you can leave your comments after the fact and let us know what you think about the Vikings squad. And give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram. And until next time, thanks for watching.